Okay, thank you guys for joining us today. Today we're going to be going over some basic concepts of final expense and what we're calling our Final Expense 101 webinar. So let's go on and get started with that. First things first, when we say final expense, what do we mean? 99 times out of 100 when people say a final expense policy, what they're talking about is a small whole life policy. Usually it's going to be between $10,000 and $50,000. Very rarely it's going to be a little bit more than that, but 10 to 50 is kind of the sweet spot. These are whole life policies that are designed to stay in force for the rest of the client's life and to be paid for the rest of the client's life. Final expense policies generally don't have a paid up date. We're usually going to be having lifetime monthly premiums here. The purpose of the policy is to pay for the client's final expenses, the burial, the loose ends, a memorial, that kind of thing. It's not a huge policy, like we said, $10,000 to $50,000. It's not going to pay off the mortgage. It's not going to pay off credit card debt. It's going to pay specifically for the client's final expenses. Final expense policies are just about universally non-medically underwritten. There are a very few couple of final expense policies you can sell that are medically underwritten. You can sell those to more healthy clients or affluent clients. But generally, if we're talking about final expense, we're almost always talking about non-medically underwritten policies. And that, of course, means that these policies don't require a paramedical examination. Usually, they also have fewer health questions than other policies, so clients with a few health issues, which is going to be common in the final expense market, won't have as much problem getting set up with a policy. Final expense is offered by a ton of carriers, and we've just listed 5 here. These are, personally, these are the 5 that I enjoy working with the most in the final expense market. There are certainly others out there that offer final expense products. United Home Life, I love these guys. They actually have 4 great final expense products, and they're all very competitively priced. Americo, great commissions on their products, and also decently competitively priced. Fidelity has pretty loose underwriting. Foresters, they're going to be introducing a telephone signature, a voice signature later in the year, so that's something to look out for. It's going to make selling final expense over the phone a lot easier. And Presidential. Presidential is the company you want to go to when your client has one foot in the grave and the other foot on the banana peel. These guys will take just about anybody. I want to say the application has 2 questions on it. Are you confined to a hospital bed, and can you breathe on your own? If you answer, no, I'm not confined to a hospital bed, yes, I can breathe on my own, you're eligible for Presidential. So they're going to take clients that many others won't take. You see the trend here. These are small whole life policies. I apologize for my voice, it's kind of hoarse today. These are smaller whole life policies with loose underwriting. We've talked in other webinars about the concept of table ratings. A standard risk consider a standard risk to be 100% of your normal premiums. Generally, table A is going to be one level below standard. It's going to be 125% of normal premiums. Table B is 150%. Table C is 175%, so on, so on, so on. With final expense products, you're going to find that companies will issue United Home Life, for example, these guys will issue all the way down to a table 16. They also have a policy that's designed for clients that want to issue down to a table 8. They have a policy designed for clients to issue down to a table 4. And they have a policy designed for clients that issue at a standard risk class. All 4 policies meet different needs. All 4 policies have different underwriting, and it gives you a very wide variety of tools to use for clients regardless of their health condition. Final expense is a pretty specific target demographic. Depending on who you ask, this age range could change a little bit. Personally, when I target final expense, I like to go between the ages of 55 and 75. Some people will say 50 to 75, some people will say 50 to 70. It just kind of depends on who you're talking to. Ages 55 to 75, though, is kind of a sweet spot for me, and that's what I've focused on mostly. When it comes to household income, there are two schools of thought here. One is to go for household income between $0 and $15,000. These are very financially troubled folks who don't have anything put back for a final expense savings plan. Folks that wouldn't have insurance at work, folks that wouldn't have a 401k. The philosophy there is that these folks have no other form of protection. You can help them with this. However, in my experience, the chargeback ratio in that demographic is enormous. It's very difficult to write persistent business there, which is why I personally recommend targeting the demographic that has a household income of $15,000 to $50,000. This demographic tends to be able to afford the premiums a little more readily. That means you get fewer chargebacks, your business stays on the books longer, and you end up making more money overall. There are three main ways of prospecting for final expense: door knocking, dialing, and mailers. So let's go through each one of these one by one. Door knocking is exactly as painful as it sounds, and I'm really truly talking about going out and cold knocking. This is something that's rarely done anymore, to be completely honest, and agents don't like to do this, and there are better ways to do it. It's painful. You go out, you knock on doors, and you try to set appointments and get an interest. If you're going to do this as your primary method of marketing, go to www.zipwho.com. We've got that right here. What you can do there is you can kind of geographically target your knocking by zip code. You can target zip codes that have a slew of households in the proper age range, a slew of households in the proper income range, and make sure that the doors you're knocking on are going to be true final expense candidates. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is to be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. If you're going out doing this, you're not going to always be in high-income neighborhoods. You're not always going to be in very safe neighborhoods. Don't go out there in your BMW and your suit and tie, because it kind of makes you look like a target. I'm probably a little bit biased on this. You know, some of you guys know I live in downtown Atlanta, so for me, door knocking is not a very viable strategy around here. What you want to do if you're going out door knocking, you're being even more invasive than cold calling, which means you're going to have a pretty low success ratio. But you want to assess for interest and probably set a future appointment to come back. When you're doing this, you're going to need to go around with a lot of literature, a lot of flyers. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, my name's Nick Perry. I'm with Georgia Insurance Options. I'm just happen to be in your neighborhood, and I wanted to drop off some information with you about final expense life insurance. Do you currently have a final expense life insurance plan in place? Well, I know I've caught you kind of off guard today, but I'd love to sit down and talk with you a little bit about this type of insurance. Do you have any time today, or would you like to schedule a time later on this week for me to come back so we can talk more at length? It's a low probability thing, but if you go out, you knock on doors all day, you can get through a couple. You can get through about 100 if you're in a good neighborhood and you're walking quickly. You can set 2 appointments. You can close 1, and you can make a couple $100s a day doing it. So it's a very inexpensive. It's a free way to get off the ground, essentially. When I'm doing door knocking, and I really don't do this much, what I do is if I'm already out on a face-to-face appointment, I will kind of do a box around the house. So the house in front, the house behind, the house to the left, the house to the right, and then the 4 corners. And I'll knock on those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 doors and just say, "Hi, I was just over helping your neighbor, Mr. Smith, with his final expense life insurance, and I had some extra brochures, so I figured I would come around and drop them off with you. And kind of go into your spiel from there. It's a good way of gathering referrals. You're out in the neighborhood on your feet anyway. You've already got the literature with you. You might as well go on and knock on a few doors to see if you can drum up a little extra business." Dialing is a much less painful way to prospect for final expenses. It's personally my favorite way to prospect for final expense. Using the Mojo Dialer is essential here. With final expense life insurance, you're dealing with, again, lower income folks. You're going to be dealing with a higher proportion of disconnected phone numbers, transferred phone numbers, bad names, bad addresses, that sort of thing. So the Mojo Dialer is going to be just indispensable in helping you burn through all these bad numbers quickly. You want to have a brief, targeted script. "Hi, my name is Nick Perry from Georgia Insurance Options. I'm calling you today to talk to you about your final expense life insurance plan. Do you currently have a final expense life insurance plan in place?" Something like that. Very brief, very to the point. And what you're doing, you're not dialing to sell them on the phone. You're not dialing for a one-call close. You want to dial to set appointments. You want to dial, "Okay, well, this sounds like a product that would be a good fit for you. This sounds like a service you need. Why don't you and I get together to discuss this more face-to-face. I've got an opening on whatever date at whatever time, and I've got an opening on whatever date at whatever time. Which one of those works better for you? Give them that choice, which one they want to set. You can go ahead and close them face-to-face. There are a few companies, Assurity, Foresters in the future, Baltimore Life, they're going to allow you to close final expense products over the phone. What you're going to find is that closing over the phone has such a low persistency. By that I mean client might pay the premiums 2-3 months and then drop off. That is not going to be worth your time. The chargeback ratio is going to be enormous. The persistency is going to be terrible. You're going to find that going out and closing these deals face-to-face is going to end up, yeah, it's a little more inconvenient, but it's going to make you much, much more money down the line. Probably the most popular way to prospect for final expense life insurance is through a direct mail campaign. It's the same target demographic, households with $15,000 to $50,000 in annual income, and in which the main inhabitants are between the ages of 55 and 75 years old. What direct mail is you hire a mail house to send out 1,000 pieces of mail. It's little postcards. Clients get the postcards. If they're interested, they fill out their information and send it back in. Once the mail house gets the information, they send that to you. You call them up. Hey, this is Nick Perry with Georgia Insurance Options. I just received your card in the mail indicating that you were interested in discussing a couple of final expense life insurance quotes with me. I'm calling to schedule a time for us to sit down and discuss that. It's very simple. It's very easy. Through the association, you can get a discount, $335 for 1,000 pieces. Normally, you're going to pay about $400 to $450 per 1,000 mail pieces. So the discount we have, I'm pretty excited about it. And it's a reputable mail house. We've had several members use it already who have come back with very positive results. One thing that we've noticed with direct mail, it's better to target kind of the suburbs and the rural areas than, for instance, downtown Atlanta, where I live. I'm not going to send a direct mail campaign straight into downtown. It's no good for me. But I have found greater success sending it into the suburbs, the areas around Lawrenceville, Marietta, Sandy Springs, these places that are not right in the heart of the city, but tend to be on the outskirts, where $15,000 to $50,000 goes a little bit farther and you find a little bit more comfort. Final expense does come with its own set of kind of pitfalls. Persistency with final expense is notoriously low. If you submit 10 final expense policies, you're probably going to get paid on 7 or 8 of them. And 2 months from now, probably 5 or 6 are going to be on the books. You can improve that closing ratio by closing face-to-face, and you can improve that closing ratio, or that persistency ratio, by making sure that your clients are being put into policies they can afford. But persistency is never going to be as high as it is with normal insurance. It's always going to be low. If you're hitting an 80% persistency ratio with final expense, I got a round of applause for you. It's very impressive. Face-to-face closing, like we said, is going to really improve your persistency, and it's going to improve your closing ratio. If you're doing this over the phone, you're setting yourself up for what they call chargeback hell. You're going to be working with a demographic, $15,000 to $50,000, older clients. They're a little forgetful sometimes. You're going to get stood up some. That's okay. That's why if you're going out on an appointment, I don't like to leave the house unless I've got 2 or 3 appointments to go to on that block. What I'm doing, if I'm going out at 8 in the morning, I expect to see 3 people before I get back in. That way, if 2 of them stand me up, I've still got 1 appointment out there that's got a chance to turn into a sale. And you're going to get no-showed a couple of times here. The last thing to check for is the bank account. You want to make sure that your final expense clients have a bank account. Most companies are not going to be thrilled with a monthly check because, again, persistency is a big issue with final expense. These clients tend to forget to pay their bills. They forget to pay the life insurance. If it comes directly out of the bank account, persistency is going to be much higher. A lot of folks are not taking direct monthly bills anymore. What they want is a bank account that they can automatically debit the premiums out of. Now, easy way to find this out, because if you walk up to a client and say, hey, you got a bank account? Okay, it's kind of a disingenuous thing to ask. A lot of agents will use a trick. So is your Social Security check, or your aid check, or your paycheck, or your retirement, or your pension, or whatever check, deposited directly into your account, or do you get a paper check that you have to take to the bank to deposit yourself? Asking kind of a soft question like that will let you know whether or not the client has a bank account, and they're also going to let you know whether or not the client's familiar and comfortable with electronic funds transfers, EFTs. You'll notice we didn't talk today about internet leads for final expense. The reason for that is internet leads for final expense are absolutely terrible. You will go broke using internet leads to sell final expense life insurance. I have never known anyone to be successful using final expense internet leads. They're universally oversold. They're universally poor leads. You get clients in the older generation who are not entirely sure. Maybe they're not as computer savvy as we expect, and they're not entirely sure what they signed up for, or how they got this quote, or what's going on, and you're going to find a lot of frustration and a lot of heartache there. Alright, so we've gone over the basic concepts of final expense, what final expense is, some ways to prospect for it, some very kind of a brief overview of some sample scripts to use while prospecting. We can go more into depth with that if you guys would like in the question and answer section. And we've gone over some of the pitfalls and things to watch out for with final expense. That's going to wrap up the crash course, the basic overview of final expense, presented by the ILIAA. Now we're going to go on and open things up for questions. If you guys have a question for us, please hit *6 on your phone to unmute yourself, or type out your questions in the chat pane in the lower right-hand corner of your screen.